Hello, and welcome back to the UAS Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Piekarski. Today, I am joined by Kelley Wittenberg, Technical Sales at Central UAS Technologies. Kelley, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Danielle.
Of course. So to start with a bit of context for the listeners, can you take us back to where it all started with Leading Edge and how that evolved into what is now Central UAS Technologies?
Absolutely. So Leading Edge really started out as a kind of startup / family business. It was two brothers that started the business, our Vice President Mike Reynolds and then our President Bill Reynolds. Bill came from a long history of droplet and swath analysis, mosquito control, and aerial manned aircraft operations with a company that he was a part of called Adapco. He was in that mosquito control aerial operations world for about 40 years prior to selling that business off and starting Leading Edge. Don't tell him that I told you that he is that old, because he will say, oh, I must have come out of the womb doing mosquito control. But that just shows you kind of the experience level that we had coming into this business. So Mike and Bill started Leading Edge Associates in 2009. They started primarily on the software side of the business, doing droplet analysis and effective swath width characterization analysis, and also creating a geospatial database management system to run mosquito control operations. Over time, the world evolved, technology evolved, and around 2012, they started the branch of the company called Leading Edge Aerial Technologies, focusing on the drone side of the business. Now, we actually originally started as a dealer for another company's drones. I don't know if I can say who, but it didn't last long, because when Bill got these drones in and used all of our technology to analyze the droplet spectrum that was coming from these drones, to analyze the effective swath, he said, oh, this is not going to work. I know enough to know that this is not going to be efficacious or responsible treatment, so we'll do it ourselves. I don't know if he knew quite what he was biting off at that time, but here we are all these years later, and each year our drones have gotten more technologically advanced and larger. So we sold our first drone that we manufactured in 2017, and fortunately or unfortunately, that very first drone is still in operation. So that just shows a little bit of how we started into that business.
Great. Thank you for that background. So in more recent news, Central UAS Technologies was one of the first to receive FAA certification for UAS spray applications. What did that achievement mean for the company, and how has it kind of shaped your role in the UAS industry today?
It's an interesting question, because back when Bill started with the drone side of the business, it was kind of the Wild West. So they were creating these drones, and we've got, historical pictures all over the office of all these different drone models that they created. And they were huge, they were clunky, they had a payload of like a less than a bottle of water worth of liquid. And so we went out to try to do a mosquito control application. And so Bill called the FAA to ask them, hey, what do we need to do to be legal doing this application? And they said, I don't know why you're calling us, call the Department of Agriculture. So then Bill calls the Department of Agriculture, and they said, we don't know what to tell you. This sounds like an FAA thing. And so we realized at that point that we're kind of on the ground floor of this world of drone applications. And so Bill actually collaborated a lot with the FAA to create the pathway to the Part 107 licensing, the the Part 137 waiver process, the 44807 lists, all of those regulations that have been developed over time and continue to evolve. In fact, at one point, he said he was in the field spraying and getting a call from FAA agents to ask him questions of how do we need to approach this? What do we need to look at? So Bill really was one of the forefathers of the spray drone business.
Very interesting. Okay. So your precision vision line is engineered for both granular and liquid applications. What sets these drones apart in such a fast evolving market?
Well, we started, like I said, from the beginning with mosquito control. And there are both liquid and granular applications for mosquito control. And so we developed an excellent granular payload system years ago that to this day we've got industry leading swath width with our granular payload system. Started out again for mostly granular larvicide applications in that mosquito control realm, but now that has evolved all the way to cover crop seeds, ant baits, black fly applications for cattle, and any sort of granular material we're able to scatter, and we can get up to a 90-foot swath width with that granular payload. And funny enough, until recently, we were always excited to tell people that we average from 55 to 90-foot swath width for that granular payload system, because the goal has always been, let's get a wider swath width. But actually, since our acquisition by Central Life Sciences, now the black fly people in the cattle realm have said, hey, we actually need a narrower swath width. If you can, let's design something so that we can narrow the swath so we can do black fly treatments in feed lanes for cattle. And so we were able to design a new kind of configuration so that we get between a 2 and 4 foot swath for those special applications. So that's kind of the granular side of the business, or of the drones. On the liquid side, we are really differentiated from most other drones in the market because we have a boom and nozzle configuration for our liquid payload system. So what that means is that towards the skids at the bottom of the drone, we've got a boom that you can place any number of nozzles and any type of nozzles on that boom, depending on the application that you're doing each day. So you can really customize the type of droplet spectrum that you've got, the swath width, and the spray pattern, depending on what your use case is that day. And with that liquid payload system, in addition to the regular boom and nozzle for broadcast treatments, we also have a single downward facing nozzle option for precision spot treatments. We do a lot of precision spot treatments in pasture and rangeland management, and a lot of specific weed treatments. And then we've also got a single horizontal stinger nozzle for things like dams and cliff sides. So it's just so customizable that you are able to really choose what you need for that particular treatment. And you can swap out these payload systems in the field in just a number of minutes. In addition to the regular granular and liquid payload systems, we also have an ultra low volume adulticiding payload system that's primarily used for mosquito control, for controlling adult mosquitoes, because it goes down to a droplet size of 40 microns. But that's something that you can really effectively do with a drone. So you can use this one system for so many different use cases.
Wow, yeah. Really an incredible amount of diverse markets that you serve, from mosquito abatement to the pasture and rangeland management. Do you have any standout stories that illustrate how your technology is making real world differences?
Absolutely. I've got a couple that I'd like to touch on. One thing that I'm really passionate about is invasive species control. And we have been working with California State Parks in Big Sur, California, to combat invasive jabata grass, which is on the cliff sides and mountain sides by the ocean in Big Sur. And those are really difficult to treat because you've got a winding road on this cliffside mountainside. You've got nothing above except for vegetation, mountain, and these weeds. And then you've got nothing below except for more of these weeds and then the beach down below. So the only way that they were able to treat for this jabata grass prior to using drones is for someone to rappel down and hand spray, which is costly and very dangerous as well. The reason you want to treat for things like jabata grass in situations like that is because, one, they're invasive, so they've got no natural, predators in the area. But the biggest reason is because they've got a shallow root system. So left unchecked, they can spread and lead to a lot of mudslides and things like that where people can get injured or killed. So we were able to come in with the drones to do these applications in this really difficult terrain and solve this problem and help with this invasive species that was really hazardous. So that's one really cool use case, and I'll tell you what, the videos from those applications are beautiful, just because it's just beautiful landscape. But another really interesting thing that we did, which will kind of show you more of the innovation of our company, is we were contacted by a large pecan grower in South Georgia because they wanted to find a way to do a drone treatment of their pecan orchards, but they didn't want to do just your standard broadcast overhead treatment because they weren't getting enough canopy penetration. So they wanted to get rid of ground rigs because they are planting rows for pollinators in between the rows of pecans. So they really wanted something flying over, but they were thinking that they wanted a drone to fly in between each row of these pecan trees. That's a little bit difficult to do. It's a little bit hazardous. So what we did is started out in my office on the whiteboard, just kind of drawing some ideas for how we could make something that would make this possible. And that turned into the vertical spray boom that one of our engineers, Clayton Slaybaugh, was able to actually produce. And it was a very long boom that hangs down vertically from our drone that sprays out horizontally so that that boom can fly in between each row and get full canopy penetration from top to bottom of these pecan trees in a way that's never been done before. We took that vertical spray boom out to the orchard. We were able to do some tests with it. And what we found and what the grower found was that the penetration and the droplet spectrum from top to bottom on these trees was as good or better than the ground rig. And so that was something, again, from start to finish, it took us less than 2 months to get that whole whiteboard to application completed. So that was a really cool way that we were able to solve a problem that we didn't know existed in a very short period of time. So that's one thing I love about this business is we're able to do that, and we're nimble enough to do that as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, and also a problem that I had not considered at all. So in addition to the variety of markets you serve, you also go beyond just providing equipment. Why was it important to your team to build a full service model?
That's a great question. And really, the reason that we have created this full service, end-to-end model is that we came to this holistically. So we, like I said earlier, started with the software side of the business, with all of the research and the data from Bill's previous job and from a wealth of data and information collected by Bill's wife, Piper, who is our biologist that we have on staff. So I I don't know if you're going to put this in the interview, but I like to say that we're the least sexy drone manufacturer because we started with years and years of research and data and software and used that to create this platform. And I think that's one thing that people have found is vastly different from what else is available.
Okay, well, I have one last question for you here. Projections are showing that UAS growth will be quadrupling by 2030. Are there any innovations within your company upcoming that you are excited about?
I'll tell you, there are so many innovations and technological advances that are coming down the pipeline that we're thrilled about. We've got some short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. In the short term, we're releasing our PV100X drone system that will be available starting this week. It's a 100-pound payload capacity spray drone, which has those interchangeable liquid granular ultra low volume payload systems. And it's fully made in the United States with, some parts that are globally sourced, but all communications components are made in the United States. So we're NDAA Section 889 compliant. And we've worked with organizations like Bureau of Land Management, Tennessee Valley Authority, Customs and Border Patrol, USDA, all sorts of federal entities that require that level of NDAA Section 889 compliance in their drones that they use. So that's something that's very, very short term that's available starting this week. In the medium term, we are looking at some innovations as far as imagery drones. One thing that anybody who does spray operations and specifically precision spot treatments knows is that the way to do precision spot treatment in a large area, say pasture, rangeland, state park, is that you've got to take an imagery drone out, take the imagery of the area where you want to treat, you post-process that imagery where you orthomosaic it together, geotag all of the weeds or trees, whatever you're spraying, and then you can upload that geotagged information to our spray drone to autonomously spray with RTK with 3-centimeter precision. That's the process currently. And we're developing some of our own imagery drones so that we're making that process as seamless as possible. So that's kind of that medium term. In the near future, past that, we are also developing AI integrations so that one day we can kind of skip those middle steps and have the spray drone have kind of what I call seek and destroy technology, where it can use AI on board to recognize a particular weed or a number of particular types of weeds, to spray those weeds, mark them as sprayed, and move on to the next location. That makes things so much more simple, and it cuts down on that middle process where you've got to do a lot of processing of that information. And so that kind of AI integration is something that's on the horizon as well. And that's something that we have been able to really dive into headfirst because of our partnership and acquisition by Central Life Sciences and Central Garden and Pet as the overall parent company. They acquired us in November of 2024. They kind of saw some of the legislation that was pending about Chinese drones versus US-made drones. And they saw, again, like you said, that number of 25% growth over the next 5 years and said, hey, this is a really good industry to be a part of. And it makes sense because we already use our drone to apply a lot of Central Life Sciences products for mosquito control, black fly, ant bait, all of that. So with their expertise and their pocketbooks, which are a little bit deeper than Bill and Mike's, We're able to do things with AI, edge computing, weed recognition that we were not able to do before. So those are things that are really going to revolutionize the way that we're building spray drones and that we can use spray drones in the not too distant future.
Super exciting. Again, we are talking to Kelley Wittenberg, working in technical sales at Central UAS Technologies. Kelley, thank you again so much for joining us. It was so interesting to hear from you.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you again so much.
Of course. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close out today?
Just a couple of things. So I would love to shamelessly plug a big show that we will be at the beginning of September. We're going to be at the Commercial UAV Expo in Las Vegas, September 2nd through 4th. That's going to be a really great show, and we'd love to see people there. It'll be a really fun time. We will also be at the Sunbelt Ag Expo in October. I think that's October 14th through 16th, and that will be in Moultrie, Georgia. And then you can find us online at centraluastech.com. And we'll be having a lot more information, a lot more releases coming out, both on our website and social media soon.
Great. Well, thank you again. If you are interested in learning more about Central UAS Technologies or their involvement in the upcoming Commercial UAV Expo or Sunbelt Ag Expo, visit centraluastech.com for more information. Keep an eye out for their upcoming spotlight article in the next issue of UAS Magazine, and follow them on Facebook and LinkedIn to stay up to date on company news. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to UAS Magazine for more podcasts like this and to stay up to date on the latest industry news. We hope that you enjoyed this podcast and look forward to next time. Until then.